Hey everyone, it's Alex. Welcome back to English Low. Today, I want to share something a little different, a story from my business trip to Italy. It was a professional trip for a tech conference, but it also turned into one of those rare experiences where work, travel, and culture blend perfectly together. I'll walk you through everything that happened, from landing in Rome to meetings in Florence, to a weekend wandering through Venice. Along the way, I'll point out some natural English phrases and expressions that fit real-life situations, especially if you travel for work or talk about your experiences in English. So, let's get started. When I first landed in Rome, the warm air hit me the moment I stepped off the plane. I'd just come from Seattle, rainy, gray, and about 10 degrees colder, so Rome instantly felt alive. The taxi ride from the airport was a crash course in Italian driving. Scooters zipped by, people chatted loudly on sidewalks, and everything moved fast. Yet somehow, it worked. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "First time in Italy?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, business trip, but I hope to enjoy some pasta too." He laughed and replied, "You'll never leave." That was the first of many moments where I realized how warm and expressive Italians are. At the hotel check-in counter, I heard one phrase I ended up using a lot during the trip. Could I have? It's such a polite, flexible way to make requests. Could I have a room with a quiet view? Could I have some extra coffee pods? Even when you're tired from a flight, little polite phrases like that make you sound confident and respectful. After a quick shower, I walked through the streets near Piazza Navona. The cobblestones, the fountains, the smell of espresso, everything felt cinematic. But I had to remind myself, I was here for work. Our startup had been invited to present at a European Tech Innovation Summit. The next morning, I'd be on stage showing our new software, a cloud-based platform for real-time language processing. So that evening, I practiced a bit in my room, made sure my slides worked offline, just in case the Wi-Fi failed, and then went out for dinner. At the restaurant, I met two other speakers from Germany. We talked about AI trends and the challenge of balancing speed and ethics in tech development. One of them used a phrase I liked: "We're moving fast, but we're also building responsibly." It reminded me that even in English, tone matters as much as vocabulary. Saying "moving fast" sounds more natural than developing quickly. Native speakers often use simple verbs with more feeling. It's not just grammar, it's rhythm. The next morning, I arrived at the conference center early. People were setting up booths, checking microphones, adjusting lighting. I met a coordinator who said, "Hey Alex, could you run your demo one more time before we go live?" Run your demo. That's a very common workplace expression meaning test it quickly. So I did. Everything worked fine, except one small bug. For a second, I panicked. Then I reminded myself of another phrase. Go with the flow. It means don't fight the situation, adapt and stay calm. And that's exactly what I did. When I finally gave my presentation, things went smoothly. I introduced myself, shared our product's purpose, and demonstrated how it could help companies analyze customer feedback in multiple languages. Afterward, people came up to me to ask questions. One woman said, "I liked how you explained the user journey. It was very down to earth." That expression, down to earth, means practical, real, not too technical. It's a compliment. That evening, we had a networking dinner. In tech, networking is where half the real work happens. People chat casually, exchange ideas, and often say things like, "Let's touch base next week." It means, "Let's follow up," or "reconnect soon." Someone asked me, "So, Alex, what's your next stop after Rome?" I said, "Florence, meeting a partner company there." He nodded and said, "Lucky you. Florence is like walking inside an art gallery." He was right. When I arrived in Florence 2 days later, the first thing I noticed was how different it felt from Rome. Rome was big and energetic. Florence was elegant, artistic, and slower. My hotel was near the Arno River, and every morning I could see the Ponte Vecchio bridge glowing in the sunrise. My first meeting was at a co-working space called The Hive. I met with an Italian developer named Luca, who had been helping us integrate our software with a translation tool. During our chat, I made a small slip. I said, "Our project depends from your module." Luca smiled politely and corrected me. Depends on, not from. I laughed and said, "Right, depends on. I've been speaking too much code lately." Moments like that remind me how useful it is to make mistakes and how natural corrections sound when people are kind about them. After lunch, Luca invited me to try bistecca alla fiorentina, a local specialty, basically the biggest steak I've ever seen in my life. He said, "In Florence, we say, if you don't finish it, it wasn't real hunger." I joked, "Then I'll make sure to prove it's real." During lunch, he used another great phrase, "I'll run it by my team." That means I'll check with them before making a decision. It's common in business English and makes you sound collaborative rather than bossy. That afternoon, we wrapped up our project plan and took a walk through the Ugeffi courtyard. Street artists were painting portraits, tourists were taking photos, and the sound of violins echoed through the arches. I realized that even though this was a work trip, it didn't feel like work at all. It felt like learning, about culture, about people, about communication. By Friday, I was heading to Venice for the weekend. I'd finished all my meetings, sent a few follow-up emails, and decided to take a train north. Train travel in Italy is smooth, fast, comfortable, and scenic. I sat by the window, typing notes on my laptop, occasionally glancing out at the rolling hills and vineyards. There's an English phrase for that kind of quiet satisfaction. It means taking it all in, to absorb the atmosphere fully, to notice everything around you. And that's exactly what I was doing. When I reached Venice, it felt like stepping into another time. No cars, only canals and boats. My hotel was a small, family-run place near Rialto Bridge. The owner, an older gentleman named Marco, welcomed me with a warm smile. He asked me, "Business or pleasure?" I said, "A bit of both." He laughed, "The best combination." That short conversation used two useful expressions, business or pleasure, a polite way to ask the purpose of someone's trip, and a bit of both, a friendly way to say some work, some fun. That evening, I joined a small group tour around the canals. Our guide told stories about the history of Venice, the traders, the artists, the floods. At one point, he said, "Venice is like a mirror. It shows you what you bring to it." I loved that line. Later, when I ordered dinner, I accidentally mispronounced gnocchi. The waiter smiled and corrected me gently. I repeated it properly, and he said, "Perfect." Moments like that are tiny but powerful. They build confidence in both language and connection. The next morning, sitting at a cafe with a cappuccino and my laptop, I wrote a few notes for our company blog. I described how meeting people face-to-face made collaboration easier. Video calls are efficient, but real conversation over coffee builds trust. That's a phrase you'll often hear in business. Build trust. It means to create reliability and openness between people. Before flying back home, I took one last walk along the water. I thought about how the trip started, the chaos of Rome, the elegance of Florence, the calm of Venice, and how each place taught me something, not only about work, but about communication itself. I realized that language isn't just vocabulary or grammar. It's emotion, curiosity, and willingness to listen. That's true whether you're in a meeting, on a train, or ordering gelato. So whenever you get the chance to travel for work, remember a few things. Say, "Could I have?" when you need something politely. Use "I'll run it by" when checking with your team. Keep calm and go with the flow when plans change. And most importantly, take it all in. Because those little details, those spontaneous moments, are what make both travel and English meaningful. Thanks for joining me on this journey through Italy. I hope this story helps you not just learn new words, but feel how English works in real life. If you enjoyed this, stick around for more stories that mix language, culture, and everyday situations. I'm Alex, and this was English Flow. See you next time.